Welcome to the Bound for Glory podcast. In this episode, we're talking to Manny Marquez. He's a filmmaker with a new film called Make Peace or Die that's coming out later this summer. We talk about filmmaking, creativity, and storytelling. It's a fantastic conversation you're not going to want to miss. Here's the trailer to his new film.
I never thought this would be the path that I would take. They're no longer here to speak for themselves, so somebody has to. Feels like a lifetime ago. And then, just like yesterday, I guess.
So you go on the Marine Corps?
Yeah.
What about the wars?
If that's where I go, then that's where I'll go. I was a young kid that was like gung-ho to go. You want to like fight, and then sometimes it happens.
Did it happen for you?
Yeah.
Place IEDs everywhere. They planted that hoping they're going to go there.
In 2011, our unit was deployed to Sing in Afghanistan. I was a dog handler. I had a bomb dog. I knew it was a dangerous job because your main focus is looking for IEDs, roadside bombs. Forward. Our motto is make peace or die. We're talking to the enemy. We're telling the enemy, be peaceful or we'll kill you. You just saw your best friend get shot or get blown up, and you're not allowed to grieve until you go home. We had 17 Marines that were killed. I came back a completely different person. You have to figure out ways to deal with things. First 4 years after I got out of the Marine Corps, I feel like everything I did for myself. Not even realizing that the Gold Star families were struggling as well. I was trying to figure out, well, what could I do for the families of those 17 Marines? It just came to me and I was like, well, I should do a carving of the image of the Battlefield Cross. I would just reach out to the Gold Star families and tell them I would like to present them with one. I don't know if I'm ready to do this, but I can't wait any longer to do it. It was nerve-wracking because I didn't know how one family would react to the other one. The hardest thing I've ever done in my life is have to face those families. They all say, we're just afraid he'll be forgotten.
No lo vamos a recuperar, a superar nunca, porque para nosotros va a ser nuestro hijo toda la vida.
I didn't want life anymore. I didn't want to do it anymore. It's like, how do I do it?
I was out trimming the bushes. I looked at the shears, and I wanted to just ram them through me and be done.
During that time, we went to 34 different states and drove over 12,000 miles. We interviewed 23 different Marines. I almost questioned if what I was doing was the right thing to do because I felt like I was bringing the families more pain than healing.
All right, bro?
Yeah. I'm tired of feeling this way, like tired of being like in the low point or just feel like I'm lost. There was 2 times I put a gun in my mouth. How you feeling today? Like losing a piece of me. I'm getting to say goodbye to her properly. All these families, they lost their son and like they didn't get to do that. I have to be strong because these families are so strong with the grief that they deal with.
The first time I met Anthony, all I did was hug him. I didn't want to let him go. It's like having one of his brothers here with me.
And it seems so insignificant in a world so big, but it means the most to the one person who lost that little bit of the world.
What you're doing, it's not just working for the families, it's working for the guys that know of you from being there, and it makes a big difference.
You know, this make peace or die thing, and when we're talking to these Marines, I think part of this mission is we have to help these guys make peace or they could die. you feel like you're making peace?
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Manny, welcome to the Bound for Glory podcast. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for being our first guest. It's a new podcast, and we know each other, but I thought you'd be a good guest because I don't actually know you very well. Like, we've met in passing. I think I know enough about you that I thought that'd be an interesting conversation where I'm actually really wanting to know, and there's a lot of things you could probably tell me that I don't know.
Yeah, we have circles that intertwine, like Venn diagrams that kind of like, the piece of the pie goes over here and the piece of the pie goes over there. If you know Dante, then you probably know Adam Minahan. If you know Adam Minahan, you probably know Manny, and there's pies that intersect, but like they don't all meet.
Yeah.
So yeah.
When you were saying, what we were talking about outsiders?
Well, there's a couple things about
explain
this
that close.
Yeah, when I pulled up here, I was like, I know because I'm a huge. Before the Outsiders house, before Danny Boy, and I love Danny Boy, but I was a huge Outsiders fan. And like as a kid growing up here, the Outsiders was one of the reasons I became a filmmaker. Even to the point that Francis Ford Coppola was a huge influence on me. I've even gone to the Philippines and retraced all the steps of Apocalypse Now, which is a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But I know Dally and Ponyboy, when they get pulled over by the cops in the movie, was right across the street from here. So that's important to me. I also know that my parents got married at St. Francis Xavier, about 2 blocks from here, in the 70s, and I was baptized there in the 70s. So this neighborhood is where I grew up.
Yeah, it was, and it's urban, like neighborhoods go up and down, and this area even 7-8 years ago is just pretty rough. And we've seen a lot of people renovation, and it's just so cool to see. This is one of 4 main streets in Tulsa. And I think I was saying earlier, this is the original Route 66. And because it got rerouted, it kind of lost the tension. But this used to be the place. Like, this is going into Tulsa. This was where it happened. And now it's kind of coming back around. And it's cool when we found the place, being kind of in this part of Tulsa and doing film work was like, yes, like I could have an office anywhere, but I'd like to have an office right here, Yeah.
There's a lot of creative energy here on Admiral Lewis. It's even up on 3rd Street with Studio Row, and it's this area.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you could come be a part of it and be such an interesting guest. I thought it'd be cool to start out with your background. I know that you grew up in Tulsa. You got a Woody tattoo on your arm there, and Tulsa's a big part of your life. But then you left, moved to Oregon, correct?
Los Angeles first.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And then you were gone for how long?
23 years. I left Tulsa.
And then how long have you been back?
I moved back in October of 21, and now I don't know if you want to date this, but we're in 2024. So 3 years I've been back. So
how's that been?
Yeah. Oh, Tulsa's been great. I mean, what part of the decision to move back was, I'll be blunt, like in the 90s when I left here as a young guy and I wanted to get into film, Tulsa was lacking in the creative arts. Tulsa was lacking in filmmaking. Tulsa was, it felt there was, I wasn't old enough to drink yet, but you could see what was coming around. There was no good beer. There was no good coffee. I used to hang out at Java Dave's and go to poetry night and stuff on Brookside. I was kind of a beatnik and a weirdo even then, and it was not happening for me. And so I left, right? And like in the late 90s and went to film school in LA, and I spent 11 years in LA and like worked in television, worked in commercials, worked in film. And eventually after about 11 years in LA, moved to Oregon where my wife was from because she was a nanny for film producers. And she's like, I don't want to raise kids in LA.
Yeah.
And so at the time I was finishing my first feature doc, Psychopath. And I was like, well, I want to get away from LA because I need to focus. And I had been matured enough at that point, that was like 2009, to know that being in LA wasn't the end all be all to being a filmmaker. When you're young and you're 17 or 18, you think, oh, the only way to succeed is to go to LA or New York And I wouldn't discourage anyone from doing that. Like if you want to jump head first, go to film school in LA or New York. It's a good way to like jump headlong into it. But as I matured and 11 years into LA, I was like, well, I'm not going to. It came apparent to me that I could not focus on what I wanted to achieve as a filmmaker by just being in LA. Like I needed to be out of LA. So we moved to Oregon and we lived there for 12 years in my wife's hometown of Hood River, Oregon, which was a whole new chapter because you can't tell by looking at me now because I'm a big guy, but I got into bike racing. I was racing road bikes and cyclocross. I was huge into cycling.
A lot of outdoors.
And then the mountain is a beautiful thing, like Mount Hood. We had a view of Mount Hood from our house, and I'm Catholic, and I would sit out on my deck in the morning and with my coffee, and the mountain was almost like a cathedral of its own. Like it was a gift, like to see God's creation and to look at the mountain. It was a gift every morning. I
bet.
And but around 2021, and we won't get into the politics of it, but after the toils of COVID in Oregon, which were especially hard restrictions, I had the opportunity to inherit a family home that I grew up in, and I was about to start the movie with my brother, Make Peace or Die, and I moved home in late 2021, October 2021, and that changed everything. Like I came back to Tulsa, and of course, Sterling Harjo was already doing Reservation Dogs, and Danny Boy was already doing The Outsider's House. So you could see from the outside, following Facebook pages and reading the news, there were creative things afoot here that were in line with what I was thinking. And not to attach myself to any of those projects because they're their own things, but there were things happening that I said, there can be a place for me there.
You want to go somewhere where I mean, as an artist, you kind of have, you can't really exist on an island.
No.
You know what I mean? Like you gotta, even if it's you and me, just different creatives, whatever, like you gotta bounce things off other people. You can't, how do you make a film? There's no films being made,
No. So I loved Oregon and my wife was from there, but we were just ready to leave with the COVID restrictions and the culture had changed from the 12 years before. And Tulsa seemed to be ripe for me to come home, and I started the movie with my brother 2 weeks after I moved back.
Really?
Yeah. So that was part of the decision. But the big reason was that we could see that the creative life that I was going to lead was going to be, I don't want to say welcomed, but there was a way to nurture it. There was fertile soil.
Is there some of that too that's like, it's obviously more expensive to live in LA than Tulsa. Imagine it's a little bit more expensive in Oregon than Tulsa too. It's like,
Tulsa's more expensive to live in Oregon than LA, to be honest.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, then there's that side of it that like, if you're going to make an indie film, making an indie film in Tulsa is just a lot more achievable than making an indie film in some of those other places.
Everything's cheaper from your lawyers to your camera rentals to your grip equipment, everything's cheaper here. But not just literally to cheapen. The crew are so much more dedicated because a lot of people in Tulsa are so thankful to be working on productions.
Yeah.
And people in LA, that's their livelihood, but they can say no to yours and move right on to the next one.
Yeah.
So like, I feel like there's a little bit more,
you're hungry around
They're hungry.
Here. Yeah.
They're hungry, but they're also very, I could probably name you 10 people that I could hire for a certain job here because they're all so upfront and they're also like, chasing that job, so. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, let's talk about the film because, that's what I really wanted to get into. And thank you. It's not out yet, but you were able to get me a pre-screen link to watch it. And I did. And it was just even better that it was over Memorial Day weekend. And I felt like so just dialed in. And I'll be honest, like I would not say this if I did not mean it. If I thought your film was like decent and I was like, oh, I'd say, yeah, this is a really good film. But I was like, you made me cry. Like it was seriously one of the best documentary films I've seen, and you should be very proud of it.
Well, thank you. I've probably seen the film 150 times through various iterations and cut downs and assemblies and sound mixes and sound mixes and sound mixes and audio. And I still cry when I see it. You know, the only time I didn't cry when I saw it was 2 weeks ago when we premiered it at the GI Film Festival. And because I didn't cry because we had 7 of the Gold Star families, and I know we haven't even talked about the full movie yet, but we had 7 of the families involved in the movie. And I was more concerned about them than the movie.
Yeah.
And so that was like the only time in 2 years that I haven't cried watching it.
Well, we haven't even said is Make Peace or Die is the movie.
Yeah.
And to give us kind of tee it up for us. I mean, I think there's a lot to it, but if you could like break it down into like just the gist of what is the film about. I know it's you, but following your brother. Maybe introduce your brother to us and how it relates to the film, because it kind of all goes around him.
Yeah, my brother Anthony Marquez is a Marine, but served in the Marine Corps. Served in the Marine Corps from 2007 to 2012. His first 4 years in the Marine Corps, he was in Fast Company. Fast Company is like a SWAT team. If there's an incident on a ship, there's an embassy, the White House, anything happens, they're a fast response team. He had signed a contract that at his 4 years in Fast, he would have to move to infantry. When he moved to the infantry, they needed a dog handler. And they had several dog handlers, but they said, who wants to go to the dog handling school? Well, my brother was not, how can I say this? Like, he's unorthodox. So when he didn't want to just be an infantry guy. He wanted to go to when they offered the dog handling thing.
He's looking for that unique position.
He went straight to that. And he went to dog handling school. And so when 1-5 deployed to sang in Afghanistan in 2011, April of 2011, he was a dog handler. He had a dog named Allie, and he had a bomb sniffing dog. And so when my brother was there on that deployment from April to October of 2011, that division, that unit lost 17 men. And you know, I don't know if you or I could deal with the loss of 17 of our friends within the course of 6 months. It would be hard for us, but this is what Marines do. It's their job, right?
Yeah.
So he came back and he was discharged from the Marines in 2012, and he was going about his day, but he was dealing with PTSD. But PTSD, as my brother will tell you, is almost like a cliche in a way, because every soldier, every Marine, every airman, every sailor, every guardsman's going to deal with that. Deeper than that was the survivor's guilt. You know, why was this guy who had 3 kids killed?
Yeah.
Why was this guy who was only 18 killed? Why was this guy who, you know, was the only child killed? He was dealing with survivor's guilt. And it wasn't until 2016 when his best friend's mother, Teresa Gerniger, attempted suicide on the day of her son's birthday, that he said, I'm not doing enough. So my brother had gotten into skydiving, he'd gotten into weightlifting, but he said, I'm not doing enough. And so there's a man locally, and I don't know if you're familiar with him, but I knew him from Boy Scouts because I grew up here. He had carved chainsaw carvings. His name's Clayton Koss. He's in Muskogee.
I wasn't familiar with him, but I think I'd seen his work, but I'm not familiar with him.
There used to be on Utica, a Vietnam Veterans Memorial. He was like a guy with a rifle, and I actually asked Clayton what happened to that. He goes, it just fell apart, you know, because it was a log. But Clayton Koss, he has a carving at Christ the King. He has a couple down anywhere you see a chainsaw carving in Tulsa is Clayton Koss. And so my brother had heard of Clayton Koss, and he reached out and said, I want to, on the 5th anniversary of Robert Greniger's death, I want to take a carving of the battlefield cross. It's the boots, the rifle, and the helmet. I want to take this carving to his mother. And Clayton Koss says, well, that's not an easy one to do. And he goes, I'll do it. You know, my brother's always been artistic. He was drawing rat rods and drawing Rat Fink and drawing Mickey Mouse and drawing, and and so my brother was always artistic, but Clayton Kloss didn't think he would be able to pick this up. But within a weekend, my brother carved this carving.
You're kidding. So
No.
he had no experience
No
before.
chainsaw carving experience.
Wow.
And he carved this thing for the Greniger family. And on his fifth anniversary of his death, but his birthday, he had taken the carving up to his mother and presented it. And he saw the impact it made. And he said, this I cannot do for this one mom. I have to do it for all 17 of their moms and dads. And so my brother made a mission to carve that battlefield cross for all 17 of the families. And that took 3 years, because as much as you think Facebook connects us all on Instagram, it took you look up the guy and you can't find the guy, you find his cousin, and his cousin sends you to his aunt, and his aunt sends you to his brother, and his brother sends you back to the mom, and the mom doesn't want to talk to you. And it took 3 years for him to make 17 of those and deliver them to the families of the 17.
It's incredible.
Yeah. So that was 2019. When he finished that, he said, we're approaching the 10-year anniversary of our deployment when all these 17 guys died. And I said, yeah. And he said, I would like to go on the road, and I'd like to interview their families, and I don't want to be in the movie, and I want to give them all the opportunity to talk about their sons. I want them to give them an opportunity to give the voice to their families. And I immediately, being a documentarian, said, no, I'm not going to do that. He goes, what, why? I said, because you have to have a hero. And Anthony, my brother's name is Anthony Marquez. Anthony, you are the hero.
Yeah.
And he fought me like, what's a hero? I don't want to be a hero. I'm not a hero. I'm like, this is a storytelling term. You know, you watch Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. You watch, there's a hero, and it's Indiana Jones. You watch Guardians of the Galaxy. It's the Guardians of the Galaxy are the heroes. You have to have a hero.
Yeah.
Storytelling wise. So it was like, you are the hero. You are the hero. You have to go and you have to lead this mission. But you give a voice. You make their names known, and you give a voice to the family. Well, then COVID hit. That was 2019 and 2020 when we planned on making the movie. COVID hit. And so, a lot of these families are elderly, they're older, and we're like, we can't responsibly, maybe even legally, go on the road.
Depending on where they are.
Yeah. We were going to visit, all these states and all these. So we postponed it in 2020. And as 2020 went and COVID went and the culture changed, late 2021, my brother's like, hey man, like this is the 10-year anniversary. I want it to be on the 10-year anniversary. It needs to happen. And so we started planning, and we rented an RV from Cruise America, and we went on the road for 40 days. We went 12,000 miles. We interviewed 17 families. We shot 23 different Marines. We shot 4 Navy corpsmen, and we were on the road, like I said, it was 37 states.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and then that became the basis of the movie. And there were other scenes that we shot later at Camp Pendleton, and different scenes that happened.
Incredible scene, by the way.
Yeah, but so that's the base. Sorry, it was a long answer.
No, it was a good answer. I think that leads into one of the things I was going to ask, because when you're doing a documentary like this, when you think about scripting that out, obviously, you identified, well, we need characters. Here's our hero. How do you approach that? And like, how much of the film is mapped out? How much of it is like, well, I kind of know where I'm going with this, but obviously once you get into it, things happen that there's things that come out that you didn't anticipate. And how do you find that end? Because I think one of the things I liked about the film was it was very symmetrical, and it clearly had that arc of the story to the end. I didn't feel like a lot of those documentaries that you would watch, you can kind of feel it plateau, and then you can feel them like kind of reaching to button it up and give us some sort of closure. I didn't feel that at all. I felt like it very clearly seemed like you had thought it out. And I was curious, did you think it out? Is it divine intervention to make it just all, fall in piece together? What's your process?
Both and. It's the Catholic both and, like we kind of knew what we thought would happen, but we didn't know what would happen. So like, if you watch the movie, we have the families, but like the Camp Pendleton scene, which again, your audience hasn't seen the movie yet.
It's in the trailer though. You can see the footage anyway.
Yeah. Like that was never a guarantee. That was like an after effect. Like, it was like, we went on this road trip and then my brother and I, literally, it's in the movie, he's like, I wanted to.
But not a guarantee, do you mean the families might not all be able to get there, or even securing the location?
We didn't even know if we could secure that location.
Wow.
That uniform.
Did you know it was going to be cloudy and perfect lighting on that day too?
No. I mean, none of that. Like,
because I noticed that as I was watching, I was like, wow, it's like, even it's not as hot and sweaty as it might have been,
No, none of that was planned. I mean, so we filmed the road trip, and then my brother on the road trip, because my brother, God bless him, he's always plussing things. Oh, we just did this. How can we do something else? We just did this. How can we add something else? And it was like, so we're on the road trip. We're almost back to Oklahoma, and he goes, well, I have this idea. What if we all met with the families in Camp Pendleton and we did this hike up the hill? And I was like, bro, like, we just did this road. I was tired, man. I was tired. I mean, we just did this 40-day road trip, like, I was like, we just did this 40-day road trip.
But you were the Marine, man. He's not going to stop.
And I'm like, I don't know. Why are we doing that? And I'll give this to my brother. As a producer on the film, he pushed it forward always. Like, there was always something next we could do to plus it. When I worked in commercials, they used to say, oh, you get the boards and you have to plus the board. Like, if you get a commercial, this is what the client wants. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, how do you plus that board, right? And so like my brother was always plussing the board on the film. So we had done all the families. We had gone on this 40-day road trip. We were like passing through Wichita, and he's like, well, what if we did this trip to like Camp Pendleton, and we get them all together, and they're walking up the hill, and like there's this like, bro.
So he had a vision for it.
Yeah,
he really. He saw that.
Yeah, and it was like, really,
because he'd been there before too, but you probably hadn't.
Was stationed there.
So you didn't. Yeah. He had it in his mind. He knew what that was going to look like.
Yeah, but you have to understand, like, all those crosses weren't there when he was stationed there.
Really,
because the war was young at that time. Like the war was young at that time. They trained on that hill, so like that came later. So he had this,
and we're kind of running it for some people, but it builds up to the scene at the end.
It's fine. Watch the movie.
You'll still want to watch every minute of it.
He had that idea, and it took months and months and months of paperwork with the Department of Defense and the Marine Corps, and I can't believe we made it happen. Like, it was.
Did they give you a lot of support? I mean, was it just?
They did once it was approved. Yeah. But up to I would say they almost. And Lieutenant Colonel Lim, I'm sorry if you see this, like, he's massively supportive of our project, and he was massively supportive of the project at the time. But I almost feel like they discourage it up to a point, because you're getting all these old people and these fat people and like people, like, you really think you can do this thing?
Did you have to run anything by them to screen it, like after the fact, to be like,
they had to
approve what you did?
So the Marine Corps and the Department of Defense did watch the movie after it was finished.
Yeah.
And the only control they had, and I want to make this clear because I've had this question from other people, they don't control what we have in the movie. They control what we have in the movie that features a military installation.
Okay.
So if they hated everything we did at Camp Pendleton, we would have had to cut it.
Yeah, they could stamp it.
Yeah, they could have just said cut all that. But we did. But we weren't making an anti-war film.
Yeah.
So.
But I can see that's why they would be hesitant.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm making a film about what? What I mean?
They're huge. They're huge. They have to gauge all that because there's tons of people that want to just smear the government, and
you could be Russian for all they know.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. That's a whole other story. I got arrested in China once for being Russian.
Yeah,
on a film shoot. So,
well, man, that you gave me as good an answer on that one as I could ask for.
That was a long answer.
Let's talk a bit about what it took to make the film. So I know it's obviously you and your brother, but also gear. Did you have anybody else involved? Yeah. I mean, some of these shoots, I can clearly tell some of them it's you on camera, your brother kind of helping guide the conversations. Technically, kind of what did that look like? What were you guys doing?
So it's an interesting question because this was a 20-year war. There's been so many guys that fought and served in this war that have come home and they've decided they want to make a movie about whatever aspect of the war they wanted. And a lot of these guys, in their most valiant effort, have put together interviews of their commanding officers, interviews of the Marines that were there with them, or soldiers or whoever. But they're not, and I mean this in the most charitable way, like they're not shot the most, they're not cinematic films. They're glorified.
Their brother wasn't a filmmaker.
Yeah, they're YouTube videos, and I mean that in the nicest way. And I've said this like 3 times in 3 different interviews, and I almost think like I should stop saying it because I'm going to come across as an asshole. But it's like, I don't mean it that way.
No, I know what you mean.
When we set forth to make Peace or Die, we set forth to make a piece of cinema. Not just another YouTube video, not just another documentary. We wanted to make a piece of film that could stand the test of time, and that was our goal. And so we threw whatever resources we had at it. And I'll say we didn't have a lot, but I had an FX9, we had an FS7, and we went on the road, and we had boom poles, we had lights, we were using light panel Astras. With ghost lighting, we'd put up a rag and ghost light it, and that was our kind of main style of lighting. And
you had to travel pretty light.
We traveled light because we were in a small RV, but still we had light. We had like 4 lights in the truck, but they were all LEDs. We didn't have any hard lights. We didn't have any like the lights you guys have here, the Amarans, or we didn't have anything like that. We had light panels. We had Astras, we had light panels. But I thought for the most part the movie looked lit well.
It was, yeah.
80% of the movie I shot myself. But my buddy Rod Hassler, who shot my first film and is a friend of mine who shoots my commercials and music videos, and I bring him on for most of my like Word on Fire stuff, and he was a consultant for me, and at the same time he shot like Anthony's interview. He shot like he was the DP on the First Sergeant's Hill. So like on the bigger days that I'm a bigger guy, I can't walk up a 2-mile hill with a camera like anymore.
Well, I noticed you had multiple angles on that. So
we had 3 cameras on the day. We had an FX9, we had an FX6, we had an FX3 on that day, and that was the only day we had a gimbal.
I was thinking because I knew that you shot a lot of it yourself.
Yeah.
Or I guess I assumed that, and then as I was watching it, I was going, yeah, he'd have to stop everybody and it's a lot of hiking. I don't know if you'd be able to do that.
Yeah. So I had 3 different. I was one of the camera guys, but I was at the top of the hill. But Rod was an FX6 hiking up the hill, and we had another guy who was an FX3 on a gimbal on that day. And so, like, the movie is not a movie, and I don't mean this again pejoratively to anyone. It's not a movie of tricks. It's not. There's not a lot of gimbals. There's not a lot of drones. There's no drones actually. But the only day that there's a gimbal is the day we're on the hill. And it makes an impact because you're floating through those crosses.
You did that intentionally?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love seeing things like that. I could feel that, like, it just maybe because I'm a film guy too, and I could feel the transition to like a different place, and that's what it was.
That's a holy place. That's as we say, it's sanctified. It's set apart. So it's like when you go on that hill, there's a couple different angles. There's me with the FX9 shooting the families and shooting people. There's Rod who's up the hill. That's the jackrabbit keeping. And then there's the gimbal, and the gimbal is almost like the spirit of the guys.
When it's Anthony, right? Like it's his perspective in a lot of the shots. It's him walking to that crest of the hill, and you could feel. I mean, I love that you did that intentionally, and that was because people go overboard with stabilizers big time.
There's none of it.
Yeah.
All of that movie.
There's sometimes where you just want the camera to shake a little bit.
All that movie is handheld or on sticks.
Yeah.
Like that's it. 90% of that movie.
Awesome. What about sound? I mean, a lot of that, did you have a lot of post-production work to get it where you're happy with it? Which, by the way, was very good. As a sound guy, that's one of the things I think we were talking about that. It's hard for me to listen to indie films that don't even just pay enough attention to mix and master, and like there's things they're off. Like you were very solid all the way through.
Well, so in production, we had the ability to do up to 4 channels of audio. Like we had devised on my FX9 and then the FS7, I had done like 2 channels of lav, 2 channels boom, blah blah blah. You know, we had devised a way to do 4 channels of audio. So if we were doing interviews or we're doing verite, we could have had up to 4 channels of audio. We did all that ourselves on set. Like, you know, we didn't have sound people per se until the only time we ever had sound people were like boom op mixer were in First Sergeant's Hill at the end. And the uniform.
That's impressive.
Yeah, and the scene, like we did all our own audio up until First Sergeant's Hill, and that was a massive. We had like 8 mics with recorders, getting moms and dads talking. There's audio in that cut there were no cameras on people. Anthony has audio that's in the cut that there were no cameras on him. There were people hiking up the hill that had audio on them that there just no cameras on them. Like we had like 8 recorders going. We had a sound woman. She's an amazing woman. She worked on The Great Race, and Survivor, and she was our sound person that day. And she had like 8 recorders going. She had a boom op. She had a mixer. She had 3 cameras mic'd. She was insane.
That's impressive.
Yeah. But that's the only day. The only other time.
If it's all you, man, that's. I mean, you could have fooled me. I thought you had a dedicated
that's all
audio
us
guy
the whole time, like lavs and shotgun. Now, having said that, we went into post sound with Lime Studios, who are in Santa Monica, California.
I'm gonna do number 2 here.
Yeah, I'll open mine too, just so we can get past this.
I like that sound. It adds to the interview.
Yeah, Lime Studios are in Santa Monica, California. They do a ton of stuff. And we had a mixer come on board from Lime Studios, did the mix, did the post mix. Paul Humphrey and Jorge Salme are my composers. Paul Humphrey's a parishioner at Holy Family, where I'm a parishioner, and a Catholic guy here in town.
Yeah, he killed it too.
Yeah. He's a Tulsa guy, so anybody in our local scene, like talk to Paul.
It felt very, from beginning to end, again, it felt intentional. It did not feel like you can get where films, they either just like overuse a track, you know, and it's kind of like, okay, you get it, that's your song, or it can seem like a hodge, like there's just no attention to like what are we trying to say, you know, what is the story trying to say. But with you guys and with Paul, it definitely felt like he knew the story. He knew and that's probably from your close friendship and relationship, he got what you were trying to get out of it, and you could feel that.
There were other guys I would have hired. There were composers I had worked with previously, much more. Paul was an outlier. I never met him until I'd met him, but he delivered on the storytelling.
What does that process look like, say with Paul or anybody, but like for you as a filmmaker, how much are you handing off to him? Are you giving him rough edits and saying, this is kind of, what is it? How do you get to that?
For this particular film, we had a, how can I say this? Sizzle trailer.
Okay.
We had a sizzle trailer, and we had used stock music. You know, we'd used stock music.
To kind of give him an idea of what you want.
But we stripped that stock music out. And so I had about 5 composers interested, one of which I do a lot of Catholic media. I worked with one of which, who I love, and I still work with him constantly. I'm working with him now on a project. I wanted to hire him, and I said, what my brother and I had come up with was, here's the sizzle. You guys compose music to this. And I know, I mean, maybe that's a little crappy because it's like you have to work on a 5-minute edit, but we're about to give you like $25,000. So you need to like prove to us that
you can do
we're going to use you, you know?
Yeah.
And so we handed this sizzle reel without music to 5 different composers, one of which is a guy I love dearly, works in Catholic media, would have done a great job. One of which is, I consider a brother. I knew him in LA from 1999 and lived next door to me. I loved him. I would have used him for anything. I've used him for multiple things, 2 of which came from very high places in terms of film music. And people were like, use these guys. And they were interested because they weren't working. And then there was Paul. And we met at Kilkenny's, which is our place. Probably go there every day. If you need to find me, that's where I'll be. And we talked, and he had done some stuff for the new version of what do you call Arrested Development, when it came on Netflix. He had done a ton of like Hallmark movies. He had done some stuff for HBO, and none of it impressed me. I was like, well, let's see what you do with our sizzle. You know, and to be honest, Paul's music for our sizzle was in the place where my brother and our headspace was. And so it was like, that's the guy, you know? And even then, and I'm sorry if Mike Moss sees this, our editor, even then our editor fought me a little bit like, well, it's not really what I want. And it's like, well, you know, in the end I have to make the decision because if it sucks, it's my fault, you know? So, I fought our editor a little bit on him too, and our producer a little bit on him because of Paul's inexperience in their eyes, and but I stuck with him, and he's a parishioner, and he's a friend of ours, and he delivered massively, and like in ways that I could not have, to the point now I don't even know, I can't even remember what the temp music was. Yeah, you know, like the Paul's music is the music of this film. I mean, I've only seen that version of it, but I'd agree. I couldn't, as a musician, even I found very little to be critical of. I thought, man, nailed it. Yeah, and I'm a dork. Like I love Terrence Malick films. I love Arvo Part. I love all these things. And I'm like, I want it like a choir piece for the uniform scene. And I want to, you know, I was like, and he fought me a little bit on that too, but we ended up getting the Holy Family Cathedral Choir to like sing on that uniform scene. Really? Yeah. And so like we recorded the choir in the choir loft, like, you know, that's like, awesome. There's some cool things in there for me personally as a human being that are like, I'm like proud of. It kind of seems like, you know, that makes me think of another question, but, I imagine this makes sense for Anthony, definitely, but it seemed like a movie, like, I don't know when you guys decided you wanted to do this, or that it seemed more like you needed to do this. We needed to. And like 2021, May of 2021. At what point was that a conversation with Anthony? Was that, when did you guys decide that you had to do this? May of 2021. Well, and then also, like, why? May of 2021, after COVID was kind of waning. Now you need to do it because of the timing, or because it was the 10-year anniversary of their deployment. It was like, if we don't do it now, who gives a shit? I don't know if I can say this on this. So you can say shit. Yeah, but like, who cares? Like, my brother was like, "This is my brother." My brother is very. Maybe this is us being Catholics, but like, dates mean something, symbols mean something. Times mean, you know, so it was like it's 10 years after my deployment. So we knew in May of 21 that it was 2 months before Robert Greniger's birthday. Was a lot of that though him, Robert Greniger's KIA, like day, knowing my brother makes films, coming back and saying, you know, hey, Manny, I think we should do this, like, or was that you coming to him saying, hey, I think we should do this, or was it like, were you guys having beers? It was a both and. The idea popped up, or what? So I had made 2 previous short films, and I don't know if you knew this, but we had made Operation Alley. My brother was able to adopt his dog who served in 2014, and we made a short, and that was like an award-winning short, and it went well, and then, you know, and then we made a film called 17 Carvings, where he's delivering one of the carvings to one of the families. Okay. And it was a 5-minute film. And he was like, dude, we got something here. Like, let's make the feature. So you're collaborating, and as things came together, you both were like, okay, we have to do this. It was May of 2021, and he was like, we're either going to do this now or we're not going to do it. Yeah. And I talked to my wife, and Anthony, it was like, we're either going to do it or we're not going to do it. And we decided we're going to do it. And so Robert Greniger's KIA date is July 12th, 2011. And we knew that would have to be the start of the movie. And so, because he was the guy that his mother was going to commit suicide, and that we would start with Robert Greniger's mom. And so we planned for those 2 months. Right now we're in May. So we're about the time we decided that. And we decided we were going to do that with Robert Greniger's mom. And we had a month and a half to get it going. And we started filming in July 12th of that year. And then we didn't go on the road trip till November of that year, after I moved back to Tulsa. So like, that was the, when you're, all right, this little bit of a switch, but, as a filmmaker, as a kind of a run and gun filmmaker. Okay. So I know this because when I've made,
I've done a lot of foundation work, working with people in different situations, people with injuries, people with traumas, working with homeless foundations. I've shot a lot of film in situations where it's very touchy, where you have to be very aware of reading the room. What are people comfortable with? Where's that line? When are they not comfortable? So I was thinking that as watching your film, like, how do you, because it's like the situations you are going into, I mean, it's as touchy as you could possibly get. And how did you navigate, or how do you navigate getting what you need from those people without going like, cut, we got to do that over, guys. I want you to tell this story that just ripped everyone's heart out. I want you to do it again. You know what I mean? Is it like, I could feel like you and Anthony both doing that. Like, how much was he kind of like prepping people for like what you're going to, because it's hard to be behind the camera and at the same time navigating all that. How did you approach it?
Anthony never wanted to be in the room, but we had a crew member we had to let go early on in the project for creative differences, and I'll just say did not understand what we were trying to do. And so Anthony immediately became our B-cam op. And he didn't even want to be in the room. He wanted to be, you set it up, I'll make the intros, I'll walk out. But
because he just felt a little uncomfortable
too
to be
emotional
there.
for him. And he wanted to give a space for those families that was like, oh, they don't know my brother, I can just give them a space. And, you know, he had met them because he had delivered the crosses. Having said that, my style of interviewing, no matter what I do, unless it's just like a financial video where I have 20 questions and I know the client wants me to deliver these 20 questions. You know this, you do this kind of work. My work with these families, my work in my own personal work is never pointed. My work is, I call it circular interviewing. I might have 10 things I think I need to ask them, and I might ask them that thing 5 times. And I'll just sit and let the cameras run and bring it up. But it's not even really a question, it's just a conversation. You know, and so the point of this movie, and we've said it over and over again, is to make those guys' names known. That was the first thing. And the second thing was to give their families a voice. So if you know your theme of your movie, and your theme is to make their names known, is to give their families a voice, then you have no agenda. Yeah, so you go in.
And then you can be very honest.
Yeah. So you just go in and have a conversation. And there was one of the mothers, Rosalia Verbeek, and I remember very distinctly asking her, so tell me about Jared. Her son is Jared Verbeek. And she said, there, Jared. You said his name, Jared. All I wanted to hear is people saying his name, Jared. You, a complete stranger, saying his name, Jared. That's why I'm here. And it's in the movie. You know? And like that drove home to me that I was doing the right thing. I had no agenda. I had no questions. I had no, 10 answers they needed to answer. Just set the cameras up, start a conversation, mention their son.
That's so interesting because that is exactly, it doesn't really matter what genre of film you're making. It's the same thing. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I'm not being a documentary filmmaker. I kept thinking like, how would I piece this together and all that? But then it becomes really simple when it's like, look, I know my theme. I know the arching, like the idea that's through every scene and every whatever. Yeah, then it becomes a lot less complicated.
You always have to have a theme. And I'm going to be a dork. Going back to film school, you have to have a theme. My film teacher said you have to have a theme. The dorkiest theme you can have, crime does not pay. They use it as an example because it's a dorky example, but it works. Crime does not pay. Crime does not pay. Okay, go to every 1930s and 1940s noir film. Crime does not pay. Set it up. The guy's a criminal. The guy's a criminal. The guy's a criminal. Then the feds kill him in the end. Right?
He doesn't get away.
Yeah, but that's the theme. So as long as you know your theme, And I'm not saying there's no room for exploration, because we explored in this movie. We explored in this movie left and right, and nothing's wrong if you verge from the theme, right? But have a theme, because you have to have a North Pole to steer towards. You have to. There has to be north on a compass, or people are just going to go. It's just bad filmmaking, Like it's like you have to have a theme. So what is the theme? The theme is, we want to make their names known, and we want to give a voice to their families. As long as we stick to that theme.
Was that something you and Anthony came up with together? It was kind of just
he didn't know what a theme was. I had to teach him that. But
you kind of sat down and you go, we need to know where we're aiming with this. And you could probably tell from knowing him, knowing what he's going through, you could identify what it is you need to aim at.
He trusted me, because my brother is a very highly motivated person. He was a Marine. He was in Fast Company. He was a dog handler. My brother's a very motivated person. I'm a motivated person too, but I'm more laid back. I'm a little bit like sit back and watch.
You don't jump out of airplanes every week.
Exactly. He does that every weekend. But I
was curious. Did you? I mean, I saw you shot. You jumped out to shoot.
I did not do that in the movie, but I did jump out of the plane once.
But you had somebody shoot jumping out of the plane. Who was it?
It's GoPros.
Okay.
Yeah. Which they're amazing now. So
I was going to say they look very good for a GoPro.
Yeah.
Stabilization's gotten really good.
Yeah. We decided on that. He trusted me though. Like, cause my brother, he hasn't said it to me personally, but he said it in other interviews and I've heard him say it. He's like, my brother is he's a very simple man in terms of the way he says things. And I heard him say in another interview, why did you choose your brother? There's other filmmakers, there's other military filmmakers, there's other Marines that are filmmakers. And he said, I like the way he shoots. And it was like, I think that was his, not a backhanded, but it was his way of complimenting me without having to tell me personally, because it's hard for us as brothers to be like, oh, bro, I love you or whatever. But I have to say, like, this movie, I spent 3 years on this movie. And like, it's because I love my brother.
I was going to ask, what did it do to your relationship with him and with your parents?
We're close. We're closer. I mean, I moved home because of it, and not just because of it, but it was a major factor. I moved home 2 weeks before we got on the RV. My parents supported the film. My parents are investors in the film. It's huge. It's huge. This will be a landmark in our family's story, this film. Because it was, you have my brother you have Manny being a filmmaker, you have Anthony being a Marine, and then you have Make Peace or Die. And so like, that's a whole other thing, you know what I mean?
That's, when I started, the idea of doing this podcast was producer Nick back there and I, we started our company and we referenced, I don't know if you want to show your Woody Guthrie or not, but I remember in high school I read Bound for Glory, which is the autobiography for Woody Guthrie. And I've just always been a fan and I just love that idea. It wasn't really a reference to the song or even the spiritual side of it. It was just this idea of like bound for glory, like, hell yeah, we're bound for glory. Like, why not? And this idea that like, somebody asked me about it once and I said, like, I just think we're supposed to be doing cool stuff and making cool stuff, creating cool stuff. And it's like, why would you do that? Do you have something better to do? Like, why not? Why wouldn't you make this film?
Well, I was on a cycling team, which you can't tell by looking at me now because I'm huge, but I used to be a bike racer. And our team leader always said, do cool shit, don't be a dick.
Yeah.
Those were the two rules.
Make cool shit. That's what I've always said.
Do
like,
cool
why
shit,
not?
Don't be a dick.
What else are you going to do?
That's it, So like, those are words to live by.
That's funny. Tell me, Make Peace or Die. I saw the pre-screen of it. I know it's not out yet. Where are you guys at with it? When can people see this film?
Well, we just did our world premiere at the GI Film Festival, San Diego, 2 weeks ago. We won Veterans Voice Award, which was awesome, which means a film produced or directed by a veteran. My brother won that award, which we're very proud for him. We were nominated for Best Documentary. We didn't win that, which I'm a little disappointed because I really wanted, I sound like a complainer, but I really wanted to win it for our Gold Star families and for our Marines, but we didn't. It's fine. We have a Tulsa premiere on July 11th at the Circle Cinema.
Nice. Right around the corner.
Right around the corner.
Right around the corner. July 11th, Circle Cinema. I'll be
and then
there.
we have which is a private party, which I'll invite you to. But we have a public screening in Tulsa on July 13th. It'll be at the Circle Cinema Film Festival.
Okay.
So currently that's all the film festivals we have it out. Having said that, I can tell you that we have secured national television distribution for the film.
Wow.
And so it will be later this fall, and it will be available to every American that wants to see it, free of charge. I can guarantee you that. It will be playing later this year. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm not surprised to hear that because, like I said before, you made me cry. Like it is a film that I think every American should see, especially Americans who maybe don't have family who have served in the military. If you don't perhaps understand what that sacrifice is like or how that affects families down the road. And it's just an incredible story that I think you're next Ken Burns, man.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that, but thank you.
Cheers. But thank you for coming on the podcast. If people want to keep in touch and check out your work or reach out or anything like that, where are they going to catch you?
Yeah, they can follow us on Instagram at xvii.films. And then we're on Facebook. We have Make Peace or Die Film, 17 films. And then we have makepeaceordie.film.com. So
real quick before we go, that's something I meant to ask though. So, you might not want to say this, give away the title.
Talk about?
This comes out of the film. When I first heard it, I mean, you see that and you think military, yada, yada, but I didn't really connect with it until you get to the opening scenes. And you guys, can you explain to people what that means, Make Peace or Die?
Yeah, so Make Peace or Die is the motto of the 1st Battalion, 5th Marines. And make peace or die when you're in war, and we say this in the movie, is make peace or we'll kill you, basically. Like, make peace or make peace or die.
Mm-hmm.
When you come back from war, make peace or die this takes on a new meaning. It's make peace or you'll die. So this is these families, these Marines, you have to make peace or you'll die. You have to make peace of what you've been through. You have to make peace of what you've done. You have to make peace of what you've experienced or you'll die. And so Make Peace or Die is a title that was divisive. People were like, don't call it that. People were going to make peace or die, make peace or die. It was like, no, Make Peace or Die is what it needs to be called.
Yeah. You watch the first 5 minutes of it, you'll understand that is an appropriate title and it fits perfectly. So
yeah.
Cheers, brother. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah.